What's up everybody, this is Dylan. You've been asking me for a canning video where I do beans because I tell you about how I eat beans in Pico all day long, and I'm sure that's getting annoying. But I can't really just throw something together, so there's gonna be a lot more detail in this video compared to like the water bath canning tomato video I had made. But so please bear with me as I go through some of those details. This is a different process. It is more complex, but once you've done it a couple times, it is very easy. So I do encourage you not just to watch, but also to invest in a pressure canner because it is totally awesome. So let's cover some basics. What is the difference between water bath canning and pressure canning? Water bath canning, you could do it in any pot. You could do it in this stock pot, whatever. All you're doing is filling the pot up with water above your jars that are in there, and you're boiling the water for however long you have to boil it to process your jars. That can be used for more acidic foods such as tomatoes, but you can't do it for beans. Beans require a higher temperature, and what the pressure canner gets you is a much higher temperature between 240 and 250 degrees, whereas a water bath canner is only going to get you up to boiling, so like 212 degrees. So that is the main difference. The pressure canner allows you a higher temperature to process less acidic foods such as beans, potatoes, whatever. So why do beans require a higher temperature than, say, acidic foods like tomatoes? The reason is that the bacteria that causes botulism, which can kill you, can only thrive in foods that are less acidic. So it doesn't really grow in tomatoes the same way it would with beans. And so when you have an acidic food, boiling it at 212 kills all the other bacteria that need to be dead when you're doing your canning process. But with beans, 212 degrees is not enough to kill what would cause botulism. So you've got to get those to a higher temperature to kill that bacteria, and that is the real reason for using a pressure canner. It's just the temperature difference. And how we get that temperature difference is we've got a little bit of water in our canner. You don't need nearly as much as when you're water bath canning because you don't actually have to cover your jars. It's a lot like an Instant Pot. You just put a little bit of water in the bottom, and that water steams and creates pressure when the whole apparatus is all sealed up. So what's happening in the pressure canner is when we've secured everything and we've sealed it up, the water that we have that's maybe only halfway up, and our jars go all the way up to here, is that water is going to pressurize this thing. It's going to bring it up to 15 psi, which is about 250 degrees. And we're going to hold that temperature, and that temperature inside the pot is what is processing the beans, what is killing all the bacteria. So why do I like to can my own beans and tomatoes and all this? Well, ideally I would be growing all this food myself, and someday I hope that I can reach that point. But right now, for example, I bought these beans, I bought the tomatoes. So I'm really into the homesteader, do-it-all-yourself idea. Although I haven't grown my own beans and tomatoes plentifully enough to can them en masse, I am buying them really cheap and doing it myself. So I'm learning all these skills that maybe I'll be able to do with my own food that I grow someday. Also, I can save a ton of money doing it. If I buy tomatoes when they're in season and on sale, well, I can save a lot of money. For the beans, for example, well, beans are usually pretty cheap all year round at the grocery store, but you can essentially 1 pint jar of beans is like 35 cents instead of about $1. Also, I have complete control of what I'm putting in my food. If I'm buying only whole foods and I'm doing any and all processing myself, then I know exactly every ingredient that's going into my jars. I don't like buying food that has been salted. So salty beans and salty tomatoes or tomato sauce or whatever, I try to avoid. If I add salt, I would do it very sparingly and at the very end when I'm about to eat it. So I really like to avoid any salt added to my preserved food. I know that you can buy sodium-free cans of beans now. They do tend to cost about $1, but I really like just doing it myself. I know everything that's gone into the process, Also, it's more energy efficient. I have solar panels on my house, so all of the work I'm doing is with power produced by the sun. I don't have to ship the food from the farm to the manufacturer, to the store, then to me. Then I recycle the aluminum cans that I would use, and those require a whole bunch of energy to reproduce into new cans. So there's a lot of, I guess you can call it, the carbon footprint that I've removed from the system by doing it myself. So that is very important to me. I'm big into sustainability, but sustainability, I feel like that's such an overused word, but sustainability to me means to make a process as efficient as possible. There's always going to be some degree of carbon footprint or inefficiency in a process, but if you can remove as much of the inefficiency as possible, then you've got the cleanest process that you could possibly have. And with a homesteader mentality, that is very important to you. And then finally, one of the reasons that is really dear to me is recreating, I should say, a relationship with our food. Understanding how our food works, how it's grown, how it is seasonal, what can be done locally. This is so very important to me. So many people do not understand the process that it takes to get a can of beans, for example, or any other processed food that they're buying. Understanding how our food is produced by doing it yourself, understanding what is in season so that when things are plentiful, you can preserve them in order to get through the times of the year when things are not plentiful in your area. I may be in the desert where the temperatures are warm and we can grow a lot all year round, but you may not be. You may be in a place like where my parents grew up. My mom grew up in a very poor family where my grandma gardened all year long, or as much of the year as she could, weather permitting. They stored potatoes and onions. She pickled, she canned tomatoes, she canned beans, she canned everything, so that when the growing season was not happening, she could still feed her family. So that concept, even if it isn't so much necessary for the urban folk like me, where they can just run to the grocery store and get whatever they want, I think it is really important for us to understand how it works, how it has always worked in the past of our species, what is better than that? What is better than recreating a relationship with food that we can pass on? Because there may come a time with climate change or whatever it may be where things aren't so plentiful and easily available for us in grocery stores. You may need these skills someday. The you need these skills someday idea isn't necessarily my reason. It's more just the relationship with food, but it can't hurt to know how to do these things to protect your family in times of hardship, because it could happen. So those are some of the reasons why I like to can. I hope you can relate with those reasons. I hope that you'll give it a shot. I know there's a little bit of an investment in some of these tools, but this canner, for example, will last you forever. There's barely anything on here, if anything at all, that needs to be maintained. So this canner is a lifelong instrument that you can use. And the jars don't go bad. My reusable lids don't go bad. Everything that I'm doing can be reused at home without a bunch of wasted energy. I know none of us are perfect. I'm not suggesting that we're going to produce absolutely everything that we use. I know in our family we buy bananas, which come from far away, and I'm not going to produce my own clothing. I'm not going to grow cotton and make my own clothing. Well, who knows? I am crazy like that. So it would not surprise me if someday I grew cotton and made my own clothes. But it is not in my plan at this time. So I'm not suggesting that we be absolutely perfect. I know people are busy. You're going to look at this process and think that it's time consuming. It isn't. All of once you know this process in and out, you can put the beans on and you can walk away for 10 minutes while they're heating up. You can come back, you can put your jars into your canner. You know that you can walk away for an hour and 15 minutes. And then when you take your canner off the stove, you're going to let it cool. You know that you can walk away and work on something else for an hour. The actual labor involved is very minimal compared to the amount of time taken for the whole process itself, because you don't need to be there the whole time. So it isn't as time consuming as you may think. It may feel like that at first because you're gonna suck at it like I did, but you're gonna get really good at it very quickly. So don't even get me started on this freeze dryer I bought. I'm gonna show you some crazy stuff you can do with a freeze dryer, which is a crazy obsessive level of food processing at home. But we'll get there in some future videos. I am not ready to show you that yet, but little by little.